Welcome back to my Summer of Steven Week through review. Steven versus Amethyst. Okay. This episode was amazing. However, I am a lot, biased because I am a Steven shipper, and this episode is about Steven and Amethyst bonding. So yeah, I'm a bit biased towards this episode, but this episode was amazing regardless. In fact, it's one of my favorite episodes of all time. I cannot stop talking like this. Anyway, so, okay. Series time. So I like about this episode, it was really cool because it's everything. Okay, so the episode starts off with Steven gonna go tell Pearl and Garnet about his awesome defeat with Jasper in the last episode. And Amethyst is like, sad time. And then she goes to watch Steven train, and then she eventually becomes a sparring partner with him to see if she's still better than him, because she's all sad about the whole Steven to defeat Jasper thing. Anyway, by the way, in the last episode I forgot to mention that they did bubble Big's Jasper. So, just saying that. Anyway, Amethyst gets in the competitive events with Steven, like being able to dodge using combat strategies, racing, and Steven beats her in all of it, and Steven notices that she's sad about it, so he tries to cheer her up by letting her win in a video game, and she's like, I'm not stupid, I know you let me win. By the way, there's a little cameo by Ice Bear in the video games like Lonely Blade something. Anyway, and they all point out each other's, they point each other's strengths out, and they both talk about how awesome the other is, and then Steven's like, no, I'm the worst gem, and then Amethyst is like, no, I'm the worst gem, and they both like get into a whole debate about who's the worst gem, and Steven's like, I'll prove it, I'll fight you, I'll show you I'm the worst gem. And then they go to the Sky Arena, and they actually fight all out. They're using awesome strategies. Steven's taking full advantage of all his powers, almost all of his powers, so is Amethyst. And they're using awesome combat strategies that I think can be used as combos. I think Steven and Amethyst will use these as combo attacks later on in the show. Like, for example, Amethyst wraps Steven's bubble and tries to throw it at a pillar, but Steven, I think he double bubbles because he puts his hand out like he usually does with his bubble, and it sounds like another bubble's getting ready to come up, but he already has a bubble. So spikes pop out of his bubble, which is a new power. And she manages to throw him around, and Steven kicks her in the back of the head, and he uses a boomerang shield. And Amethyst tries to shapeshift in the Purple Puma and beat him, but Steven uses floating powers, but he accidentally drifts aimlessly into space almost, and then Amethyst saves him, and they both have a sigh of relief, and then Amethyst gets dunked on him, or makes him get dunked on. And yeah, she's like, Steven? And she's kind of worried, and then Steven just uses his super strength to push a rock off, and he almost beat Amethyst right there, and she even puts that out. She's like, I just dropped you from the sky, but you almost just beat me by using a rock. And then she's like, if I'm not going to be able to beat you, I'll never be able to beat Jasper. And then Steven's like, of course you can. And I think that's a little plot point they're going to use later on in the season. I think since Steven and Amethyst are both... Well, actually, I'll talk about this later on in the... Actually, you know what? I'll talk about it now, since it'll be pointed out later. Steven and Amethyst are both half quartz, pretty much. Amethyst is half the size of a quartz and has half the strength, I'm assuming. And Steven's literally half of a quartz. They're both half quartzes, and they're trying to beat Jasper, who's a full quartz. I think Steven and Amethyst are going to fuse to kind of essentially make a full quartz to beat Jasper. They're going to fuse. They're going to be the ones who beat Jasper. Steven and Amethyst. And I'm calling it now. Steven and Amethyst are going to be smoky quartz. I'm calling it. Anyway. Let's see. What was the words I was using to describe this? Okay. Anyway. They're so weak by this point they can't even use their super strength to lift a rock and throw it at each other. So they just go in for the final blow, which is a punch, and they just completely miss. And then they have a little laugh. They're like, what are we doing? And then Steven's like, what's wrong with us? And then Amethyst's like, I know what's wrong with me. I'm not what I'm supposed to be. I'm half a quartz. And then Steven's like, I don't know. I understand what you mean. I'm half a quartz too. I'm not rose quartz. And then they both have something that they can talk to each other about. And they have something that they can help fix together. They both can. This episode is just so great. They can finally talk about them both being half a quartz. And Steven even mentioned this in Joyride, but he didn't feel the confidence enough to tell the other gems, and now he can finally tell one of the gems, Amethyst, because she knows what he's going through, and he knows what she's going through. And it's just a really great episode, and I've been waiting for them to bring that up for such a long time, ever since On the Run revealed that Amethyst is pretty much essentially half a quartz. Steven is also has half a quartz, and they both feel bad about it. They can't be exactly what they want to be. And then Amethyst is like, well, your training is paying off, because you sure are ending up like Rose. And then Steven reaches out his hand, and Amethyst is so weak she can't even reach it, but eventually they do, and Steven pulls her up, and she thanks him, and then Pearl comes in, and she's like, you ruined the ruins! And then that's how the episode ends. That episode was just great. It was amazing. Also, in the last episode, I forgot to mention that Amethyst has a new form because she got bubbled or poofed. But anyway, she has like a white shirt now, a white tank top with black pants and gray stripes and gray shoes. And I like it a whole lot more than her last regeneration outfit, which is just like black with a gray pants, I think it was. I already forgot. Anyway, I like it a whole lot better than her last outfit. It's more distinctive. Anyways, this episode was just great, but like I said, I'm probably biased because I'm a Steve shipper, and this episode it's just so amazing. It hits all the right spots. The fight scene was amazing. Steven and Amethyst used all their powers to the max. And it's just fun to see Steven and Amethyst finally bond over something. Anyway, the next episode, Bismuth. This was the first ever 22-minute episode. Now you might be saying, what about Jailbreak and the Return? And what about Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem? And Super Watermelon Island and Gem Drill? Well, those are actually just those are actually just two episodes that have the same story. This, however, is one episode with a long story. Remember that bubbled object inside a lion's mane all the way back in the middle of season 1 and Lion 3 straight to video? Well, it turns out actually, Steven manages to pop the bubble, and he gets scared, so he tries to go back in the lion's mane and bubble it, but he can't, and the gem regenerates. And for the first time, instead of having the title card pop up in front of the temple or in front of the barn, we have it pop up in that scene right there where Steven meets that unidentified gem. And Steven gets out of Lion's Mane because he's kind of scared. And he describes it to Pearl and Garnet. And they know who it is. So Steven pulls that gem out of the Lion's Mane. And it turns out that gem's name is Bismuth. And people have been theorizing about this, and they were right. So was I, because I said it in my Steven prediction video. Anyway. So, Bismuth is reuniting with Pearl and Garnet. Steven and Amethyst have no idea who this is, and Bismuth gets introduced to Amethyst and Steven, who is actually Rose Quartz, and they all tell him that Rose is now Steven, essentially, or half of Steven. And then they take Bismuth to the Strawberry Battlefields to show what happened to all the other crystal gems. They've been corrupted. Yeah, they've been corrupted, and the homeworld gems retreated, but they're still after Earth, and this gets Bismuth fired up. They start talking about when they were winning in the war, and how Bismuth's describing how she could have just pummeled Homeworld. Anyway, she takes them all to the forge, and it turns out Bismuth makes weapons. She's a blacksmith, and in this episode, she makes permanent add-ons to all their weapons. She gives Garnet gauntlets like brass knuckles. She gives Pearl's spear upgrade. She upgrades it to a trident. And she gives Amethyst whip, like little wrecking ball things, spiky chain balls, as Steven would put it. And they all start bonding over Bismuth. And then right before Amethyst, considers Bismuth her friend, Amethyst mentioned that it's weird that Rose never mentioned Bismuth to her ever. And Amethyst just finds that weird, and after Amethyst mentions it, Steven finds it weird too. And anyway, they all start bonding with Bismuth, and they go for training to test out their new weapons. And then Steven's like, I have a better idea of training. And they all go inside and play video games and stuff, and watch TV and eat pizza. And Bismuth likes this. She likes the new way of training that the Crystal Gems have. And then Steven asks Bismuth about Rose, and Rose says that you're just like her, essentially, but you can be anything you want. You can be even better than she was. And this shocks Steven, and then this gives Bismuth an idea, and she takes Steven back to the forge by himself, and they go into like this underground bunker thing. It's like a lava room. And they... Bismuth gives Steven the quote-unquote... I forgot what it was. Quote-unquote thing that will be used to end the war. It's the wet secret weapon that can have been used to completely finish the war and shatter the diamonds. She gives Steven like a little weapon that could completely shatter a gem, and she uses it on a little dummy. And this makes Steven feel just sick. He feels horrible about that, and he can't even bring himself to use it on a dummy. Sorry, my nose. And this makes Bismuth mad. She's like, you are Rose. She kind of has a Jasper moment, pretty much. She's like, you are Rose. You remember this. We've been here before. You said no the first time, and now you're saying no again. And then Bismuth starts to fight Steven. After bonding with her for like 18 minutes, she's now gone haywire, and she's trying to kill Steven. And Steven's trying to talk to her. She's like, no, I don't. He's like, no, I don't want to do this. This isn't right. And then she throws one of the dummies at Steven, and it looks like she killed Steven, but Steven uses his super strength and throws the dummy at Bismuth, damaging her. And then Bismuth just holds the gem-shattering weapon to her gem, and she's like, go ahead, just shatter me. And Steven's like, no, nobody deserves this, even if they're evil. And then Bismuth grabs the weapon and pushes Steven to the side. She's getting ready to shatter Steven. And then Steven has no choice, so he gets Rose's sword, and he stabs Bismuth right through the stomach. And then she's like, you might as well have just shattered me if you're not going to tell your friends. Also, it's been revealed in this episode that Bismuth was the one who made Rose's sword. So it's ironic that it's going to be the weapon that she made that's going to take her down. Anyway, she's like, you might as well have bubbled me, because I don't want to feel like this if you're not going to tell anybody. Or she says, you might as well have shattered me, not bubbled me. And then Steven's like, I'm going to tell them everything. And then this makes Bismuth kind of sad, because she kind of realizes how bad it sounds. And then she kind of smiles, and then she's like, you really are better than her. And then she poofs. Then Steven bubbles her. He goes back to the temple, and he tells the gems about what happened. He's really banged up. He can barely walk. And they keep her bubble inside the burning room. And Steven just walks out, and the gems try to comfort him. And that episode was just amazing, especially for technically the 100th episode of the series. It was the first ever 22-minute episode. It was just amazing. I can't even describe it. It was just so good. Bismuth was a cool character, and it was just so amazing. And I'm not sure if week 4 can follow up with this week, but who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Give me a second. I'm trying to turn this. Hold on.